The neon signs of New Singapore's underground district cast an eerie purple glow across James Harrison's face as he adjusted his synthetic leather jacket. The former military contractor knew he was about to cross a line that would make his past operations look like child's play. But after discovering what really happened to his brother on that classified mission to the Zenithian homeworld, he had no choice. The entrance to the Obsidian Market loomed before him, its holographic facade masking what was essentially a high-tech slave market. James felt bile rise in his throat. 8 years in military contracting had exposed him to humanity's darker nature, but the illegal alien trafficking trade managed to sink even lower. His contact, a shifty information broker named Dante, had confirmed that the Zenithian warrior woman would be auctioned tonight. Her capture had made waves in certain circles. Zenithians were renowned for their combat prowess and nearly impossible to subdue. The fact that someone had managed to capture one alive meant either an incredible stroke of luck or an inside job. The security scan at the entrance tingled across James's skin, but his carefully crafted false identity held up. The auction house's main chamber was a testament to wealthy excess, with anti-gravity floating platforms displaying merchandise and prospective buyers in expensive suits and augmented reality monocles discussing their potential purchases like they were shopping for furniture. James took his place among the crowd, maintaining the bored expression of someone who attended these events regularly. His heart nearly stopped when they brought her out. The Zenithian warrior stood tall despite her restraints, her silvery skin seeming to absorb and reflect the harsh lights above. Intricate bioluminescent markings pulsed along her arms and neck, a sign of her elite warrior status, according to his research. Her eyes, completely black except for pinpoints of white light like distant stars, surveyed the crowd with unconcealed contempt. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer's voice oozed artificial charm, "I present to you a true rarity, a Zenithian shadow guard. Imagine the possibilities. A personal bodyguard with strength 5 times that of a human, enhanced regenerative capabilities, and combat training that makes our special forces look like amateur hour." The bidding started at 5 million credits. James waited as the price climbed, watching other bidders through his peripheral vision. He recognized several faces, weapons developers, private military contractors, and at least one crime syndicate boss. Each of them would use the Zenithians' abilities for their own cruel purposes. When the bidding hit 15 million, James made his move. 20 million, he announced calmly, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. The auctioneer's eyes widened, that was nearly double the previous bid. 20 million credits from number 47, the auctioneer announced, his professional demeanor slipping slightly. "Do I hear 21? The silence stretched. Even the crime boss seemed unwilling to go higher. James caught the Zenithian's gaze and saw something flicker in those stellar eyes, not hope, but perhaps a shift in her calculation of the situation. "Sold. To bidder 47. The processing took less than 10 minutes. James's specialized credit chip, loaded with untraceable cryptocurrency, was accepted without question. As he approached the holding area where his purchase waited, flanked by guards with neural disruptors, he could feel the weight of her stare. "Your property will be delivered to your designated transport," the facility manager began, but James cut him off. "I'll take possession here," he stated firmly. "My security team will handle transport." The manager's face twitched with annoyance, but the size of James's bid had earned him some latitude. They handed him the control key for her restraints, along with a datapad containing her documentation. As James approached the Zenithian warrior, he noticed how she tensed, preparing for something. Even bound, she was analyzing angles, measuring distances. A fighter to her core. "My name is James Harrison," he said quietly, pitching his voice so only she could hear. "And I'm here because your people saved my brother's life during the Cortex initiative. What's happening to you is wrong, and I'm going to help make it right." Her expression didn't change, but the bioluminescent markings along her neck pulsed once, quickly. She spoke, her voice carrying the characteristic harmonic undertone of her species. "I am Relara, first blade of the Shadow Guard. If you are deceiving me, I will ensure your death is neither quick nor painless. James allowed himself a small smile. I would expect nothing less. Now, shall we leave this cesspit? As they walked toward the exit, James maintained the confident stride of a wealthy buyer while his mind raced through the next phase of his plan. He had approximately 3 hours before his falsified credentials would be discovered. By then, they needed to be far away from New Singapore and any authorities who might come looking. What he didn't know was that high above the city, in a stealth-shielded orbital platform, someone was already watching their departure with great interest. James's personal transport was a masterpiece of deception. From the outside, it looked like any other luxury vehicle favored by wealthy collectors, sleek, expensive, and utterly forgettable. The inside, however, was a different story. Your restraints will deactivate in 30 seconds, James said as they cleared the Obsidian Market security perimeter. The vehicle is not locked. You can leave at any time. He kept his eyes on the traffic stream ahead, but his sensors tracked every subtle movement Relara made. The Zenithian warrior's markings pulsed with a complex pattern as her restraints powered down. In one fluid motion, she moved from her seat, combat-ready stance perfectly balanced despite the vehicle's movement. You are either very foolish or very confident, she observed, her stellar eyes fixed on him. Neither, James replied. Just honest. Check the compartment to your left. Relara paused, then reached over with lightning speed. Inside, she found a familiar object, a Zenithian pulse blade, its crystal core dormant but intact. Her markings flared with surprise. That belonged to my brother's savior, James explained, finally turning to meet her gaze. A shadow guard named Corrine. He died making sure my brother and 3 other humans escaped a Cortex Initiative facility after it was compromised. Recognition flickered across Relara's face. Corrine was my mentor, she said softly, the harmonic in her voice carrying a note of grief. We thought him lost during a solo mission. No body was ever recovered. Because the facility was destroyed, James confirmed. But before that, he gave my brother this blade and a warning. Someone within both our governments was working to start a war between our species. The city lights streaked past them as James activated the transport's secondary systems. Holographic projectors shifted their vehicle's external appearance, and quantum scramblers began disrupting tracking attempts. 3 months ago, he continued, I started hearing rumors about shadow guards being captured. Not killed in combat, but taken alive. The pattern suggested inside knowledge of Zenithian security protocols. Relara's fingers tightened around the pulse blade. We suspected a traitor, but could not identify them. 4 of my sisters-in-arms vanished during routine patrols. And then you were taken, James added. The highest-ranking shadow guard yet. Someone's building up to something big, and we're running out of time to stop it. A warning flashed across the transport's heads-up display. Speaking of time, James muttered, our pursuers are right on schedule. 3 sleek military-grade vehicles had fallen into formation behind them, their matte black surfaces absorbing light. Government cleaners, sent to eliminate any evidence of the illegal auction, including its participants. Your plan? Relara asked, her voice now carrying the sharp edge of anticipation. We have 2 options, James replied, his hands dancing across the controls. Safe and slow, or reckless and fun. The corner of Relara's mouth twitched. You humans have a saying, fortune favors the bold. James grinned. Reckless it is. He slammed the controls forward, and their transport dropped into a near-vertical dive between the glowing towers of New Singapore. The pursuing vehicles followed, their superior engines quickly closing the gap. Energy weapons powered up with a distinctive whine. They're not trying to capture us, Relara observed, bracing herself against the transport's frame. No, they're not, James confirmed. Care to show them why taking on a shadow guard is generally considered suicide? Relara's markings blazed with fierce joy as she activated the pulse blade. Its crystal core hummed to life, recognizing the touch of a Zenithian warrior. "Open the roof," she commanded. The transport's canopy retracted just as their pursuers opened fire. Relara moved like liquid mercury, the pulse blade becoming a blur of light that deflected the energy bolts back at their attackers. One pursuer's engine took a direct hit, sending it spinning out of control. James pulled their transport through maneuvers that stressed its structural integrity to the limit, giving Relara the angles she needed. Her blade work was beyond impressive, it was art, deadly and beautiful. 2 vehicles remaining, she reported, dropping back into her seat as James took them through a maintenance tunnel. "But more will come. That's why we're not staying in the city," James replied. He activated his final countermeasure, and suddenly every traffic control system in their sector went haywire. Vehicles scattered in all directions as safety protocols engaged, creating chaos that would cover their escape. They emerged from the tunnel outside the city limits, where James engaged the transport's full stealth capabilities. "I have a safe house in the mountains," he explained. "Off-grid, untraceable. We can plan our next move from there." Relara studied him with those star-filled eyes. "You took an enormous risk, James Harrison. If you are wrong about any of this." "I'm not," he said firmly. "Something bigger than both our species is at stake. I've lost too much to this conspiracy already. I won't lose this fight too." The Zenithian warrior was silent for a long moment. Finally, she extended her hand, palm up, revealing the intricate patterns of her life markings. "Among my people, when we pledge to fight together, we share the light of our lives." James hesitated only briefly before placing his hand against hers. Her skin was cool and smooth, and where they touched, her bioluminescent markings pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "Until victory or death," Relara intoned formally. "Until victory or death," James echoed, and somehow, he knew his life had just changed irrevocably. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the fates of those below. But somewhere up there, hidden in the darkness between worlds, their true enemy was waiting. The safe house was more than just a hidden shelter in the mountains. Built into the living rock itself, it was a fortress disguised as a luxury retreat, complete with defense systems that could repel a small army. But what caught Relara's attention was the view. "Your world has a strange beauty," she said, standing at the vast window that overlooked the valley below. Dawn was breaking, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple that reminded her of home. James approached, offering a steaming cup of what he called coffee. "I thought you might appreciate this spot. The magnetic fields in these mountains help mask energy signatures. Plus," he smiled slightly, "the sunrise is spectacular." Relara accepted the drink, her markings pulsing with curiosity as she sampled it. Bitter, but not unpleasant. She turned to face him fully. "You are an enigma, James Harrison. Your dwelling is both a fortress and an artist's retreat. You move like a warrior but appreciate beauty. You risk everything to free me, yet you have not asked for anything in return. Would you believe I'm just a nice guy?" James leaned against the window frame, his own cup cradled in his hands. "No," Relara replied bluntly. "Nice men do not have pulse rifle scars on their hands or military-grade neural implants behind their ears. Nice men do not maintain safe houses with enough firepower to start a small war." James's laugh was soft and genuine. "Fair enough. Let's just say I've learned that life isn't always about what you can get from others. Sometimes it's about making things right." Before Relara could respond, an alert flashed across the window's integrated display. James set down his cup, instantly alert. "Perimeter sensors. Something's approaching, but the signature is Zenithian." Relara's markings flared. "Show me." The window transformed into a tactical display, revealing a small craft expertly hidden in the mountain's thermal currents. Its design was unmistakably Zenithian, but something was off. That's a Shadow Guard scout vessel, Relara said, her voice tense. But the energy pattern is wrong. It's been modified. Friendly or hostile? Neither. Relara's eyes narrowed. That's my sister. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. James activated additional security measures while Relara established an encrypted communication channel. When the scout vessel finally landed on the safehouse's hidden platform, both of them were ready for anything. The ship's pilot emerged with her hands raised, her silver skin marked with patterns similar to Relara's but in different configurations. "Hello, sister," she said. "I see you've made some interesting friends." "Nixis," Relara responded, her pulse blade humming quietly at her side. "Last I heard, you were declared missing in action." Reports of my disappearance were greatly exaggerated, Nixis smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've been undercover, tracking the same conspiracy you've stumbled into. Though I must admit, getting yourself deliberately captured was a bold move." James's hand tightened on his weapon. "She wasn't captured deliberately." Nixis's stellar eyes fixed on him with new interest. "No. Then how did they know exactly where to find her, using specifically calibrated weapons designed to incapacitate a Shadow Guard?" Relara's markings pulsed with shock. "You're saying..." "We were betrayed by one of our own," Nixis confirmed. "Someone high in the Shadow Guard command structure. But that's just the beginning. Show them, Clarity." A holographic figure materialized beside Nixis, an AI construct with a distinctly feminine appearance. Data compiled from multiple sources indicates a coordinated effort to engineer conflict between humans and Zenithians, it reported. The capture and sale of Shadow Guards was Phase 1. Phase 2 involves using their genetic material to create enhanced biological weapons. James stepped forward. "That's why they needed them alive. But why sell them at auction?" "Misdirection," Relara realized, her voice hard. "Make it appear as though private buyers were responsible, while the real purchasers could harvest what they needed and dispose of the evidence later." "Precisely," Nixis nodded. "But thanks to your rather spectacular escape, their timeline has been accelerated. They'll be moving the other captured Shadow Guards soon, probably within the next 48 hours. James and Relara exchanged glances. In that brief look, an entire conversation passed between them, trust, determination, and something deeper neither was ready to name. "We'll need a plan," James said. "And it'll have to be good. We're talking about infiltrating a black site facility that's probably better guarded than most planetary defense systems." Relara's markings pulsed with a pattern that in Zenithian culture signified both challenge and anticipation. "You humans have another saying, the best defense is a good offense." "I was hoping you'd say that," Nixis grinned, this time genuinely. "Because I brought presents." She gestured to her ship, where the cargo bay was opening to reveal an arsenal of hybrid human Zenithian weapons. As they began to plan their assault, James found himself watching Relara. The way she moved, the fierce intelligence in her eyes, the grace with which she handled the weapons, everything about her called to something deep within him. And when she caught him looking, the pulse of her markings told him his attention wasn't unwelcome. They had a mission to complete, lives to save, and a conspiracy to uncover. But in that moment, James realized he was fighting for something more than justice or redemption. He was fighting for a future he hadn't even known he wanted until now. The sun climbed higher over the mountains, its light catching the silver of Relara's skin like stardust. They had work to do, and time was running out. But first, they would need to trust each other completely, with their lives, their secrets, and perhaps even their hearts. The next 12 hours in the safe house were a blur of preparation and planning. James watched in fascination as Relara and Nixis moved through traditional Zenithian battle meditations, their markings pulsing in synchronized patterns that filled the training room with ethereal light. "The resonance helps us attune to each other in combat," Relara explained later as they checked their gear. "It's why Shadow Guards are so effective in group operations." We become something greater than individuals. Like a hive mind? James asked, adjusting the calibration on a hybrid pulse rifle Nixis had brought. More like, what you would call a dance, Relara replied. Each warrior moves independently but in harmony with the whole. She paused, studying him with those star-filled eyes. You could join us, if you wish. Your implants should allow you to perceive the resonance. James looked up, surprised. Is that even possible? For a human? There is precedent, Nixis called from across the room, where she was working with Clarity to hack the facility's security systems. Though usually only in cases of. She made a sound that the translator rendered as somewhere between a laugh and a purr, extreme personal connection. Relara's markings flashed with what James had learned to recognize as embarrassment. My sister's talent for combat is matched only by her inability to be tactful. Speaking of combat, James said, deliberately changing the subject, Clarity's latest scan shows they've doubled the security at the facility. We'll be outnumbered at least 20-1. Excellent odds, Relara smiled, and James's heart did something complicated in his chest. For them to have any chance, they should have brought more. The facility was hidden beneath an abandoned quantum research station in the Atacama Desert. As their cloaked shuttle approached under the cover of night, James could see why they'd chosen the location. The endless expanse of desert made it nearly impossible to approach unseen, and the surrounding mountains contained enough rare earth elements to distort most scanning equipment. Security systems are top tier, Clarity reported, her holographic form flickering beside the shuttle's controls. Multiple layers of both human and Zenithian design. However, I detect a vulnerability in their power distribution network. Can you trigger a localized failure? James asked, checking his tactical display. Better, the AI responded. I can create a cascade of failures that will force them to reroute power through secondary systems. When they do, we can trace the power flow to locate the containment cells, Relara finished. Clever. They set down 3 kilometers from the facility, using the rocky terrain for cover. As they prepared for the insertion, James felt a light touch on his arm. Relara stood close, her markings pulsing slowly. James, she said softly, before we begin, there is something you should know. She took his hand, pressing her palm to his as she had during their pledge. But this time, the sensation was different. He could feel a subtle vibration, a harmony that seemed to resonate with his very bones. The resonance, he whispered. I can feel it. Yes. Relara's eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies. Among my people, this connection, it does not happen lightly. Or without meaning. James's free hand moved almost of its own accord, tracing the luminescent patterns on her arm. Where his fingers passed, the light followed, dancing beneath her silver skin. And what does it mean, Relara? It means, she stepped closer, her voice carrying harmonics that made his breath catch, that whatever happens tonight, you are no longer just an ally. You are. An alarm shrieked through the shuttle's cabin. Clarity's avatar flared red. Multiple vehicles approaching from the south. They've detected our thermal signature. They sprang apart, training taking over. How many? Nixis demanded, already moving to the weapons station. 3 combat transports, heavily armed. Probability suggests a strike team dispatched to secure or eliminate the remaining shadow guards. They're accelerating their timeline, James growled, checking his weapons. Relara? She activated her pulse blade, its crystal core humming in sync with her markings. We attack now. Hard and fast, before they can move the prisoners. Agreed, Nixis said. Clarity, initiate the power disruption sequence. James, Relara, take the east entrance. I'll create a diversion from the west. And. She paused, her markings flashing with amusement, try to finish that conversation later. Preferably when we're not about to be shot at. As they moved out into the desert night, James felt the resonance humming through him, connecting him to Relara in ways he couldn't fully understand but instinctively trusted. Together, they advanced toward the facility, where floodlights were already cutting through the darkness. The next few minutes would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of human-Zenithian relations. And as James watched Relara move through the shadows like a creature made of starlight and deadly grace, he realized he was fighting for something even more precious than peace between their peoples. He was fighting for a future that, until now, he hadn't dared to imagine was possible. The facility erupted into chaos as Clarity's power disruption sequence took effect. Emergency lights cast crimson shadows through the corridors as James and Relara moved like ghosts through the complex, their movements perfectly synchronized thanks to their shared resonance. "Detention level, 2 floors down," James whispered, following the power signatures on his tactical display. "Heat readings suggest at least 15 guards." And behind them, Relara's markings pulsed with barely contained rage, 4 of my sisters. A massive explosion rocked the western side of the facility, Nixus making her presence known. Security forces rushed toward the disturbance, exactly as planned. But as James and Relara approached the detention level, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. "Well, well," a familiar voice echoed through the corridor. "I had hoped you'd attempt a rescue." A figure stepped into view, wearing the distinctive armor of a Shadow Guard commander. Her markings glowed with a sickly green tinge that made James's implants scream warnings. "Command Sentinel Valis," Relara's voice carried equal measures of disgust and sorrow. "So you are the betrayer." "Betrayer?" Valis laughed. "I'm advancing our species. Humans are a plague, spreading across the galaxy unchecked. But their genetic adaptability, now that has value." She gestured, and doors slid open revealing dozens of combat drones. "With the right modifications, we can create the perfect warriors. No more diplomatic constraints. No more peace treaties." "You're insane," James said quietly. "Your experiments would trigger a war that would destroy both our peoples. Sometimes destruction is necessary for evolution." Valis drew a modified pulse blade, its crystal core pulsing with the same unnatural green light as her markings. "Relara, my finest student. Join me. Help me forge a stronger future for our people." Relara's response was to ignite her own blade, its pure blue light reflecting off her silver skin. "You forgot the most important lesson of the Shadow Guard, teacher. Our strength comes not from domination, but from harmony." The fight that followed was unlike anything James had ever seen. Relara and Valis moved faster than human eyes could track, their blades creating trails of light that carved through the air. The resonance bond allowed James to anticipate Relara's movements, letting him provide covering fire against the drones while she engaged her former mentor. But Valis's enhanced abilities gave her an edge. A brutal strike sent Relara crashing into a wall, her markings flickering with pain. As Valis moved in for the kill, James did something either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, he threw himself into the resonance completely. The world shifted. Suddenly he could see/feel/understand the flow of combat as Zenithians did. His neural implants merged with the resonance, creating something entirely new. Moving as one, he and Relara attacked. Their combination of human adaptability and Zenithian combat arts proved devastating. James's gunfire herded Valis into Relara's blade work, while Relara's movements created openings for James's attacks. They flowed around each other like binary stars locked in an eternal dance. "Impossible," Valis snarled, struggling to defend against their synchronized assault. "No human should be capable of this level of resonance." "You never understood," Relara said, her blade slicing through Valis's defenses. "True strength comes from unity, not division. From love, not hate." The word love resonated through their connection, carrying with it a flood of emotions that nearly staggered James with their intensity. In that moment of shared revelation, they moved as one being. Relara's blade struck true, just as James's shot hit the modified crystal in Valis's weapon. The resulting explosion threw them all backward. When the smoke cleared, Valis lay defeated, her corrupted markings fading to dull gray. Detention cells breached. Nixus's voice crackled over their comms. Prisoners secure. But we've got company coming, lots of it. Time to leave. James helped Relara to her feet, their resonance humming with shared adrenaline in something deeper. Clarity, upload all facility data to secure channels. The world needs to know what happened here. They fought their way back to the surface, the rescued shadow guards joining their battle dance. By the time they reached the extraction point, the facility was burning, its secrets exposed to both human and Zenithian authorities. In the shuttle, as they broke atmosphere, James finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. What happens now? Relara took his hand, their resonance singing with possibilities. Now, James Harrison, we forge a new path. One that proves love can bridge the gap between worlds. The Council won't like it, Nixus commented from the pilot's seat, but her markings pulsed with approval. The Council, Relara smiled, her stellar eyes fixed on James, will have to adapt. After all, isn't that what humans do best? James pulled her close, feeling the harmony of their resonance create something beautiful and new. Together, he promised. Together, she agreed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that felt like touching starlight. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, witnessing the beginning of a story that would change two worlds forever. For in the space between species, between cultures, between hearts, they had found something revolutionary, a love that transcended the boundaries of worlds and redefined the very meaning of humanity.